All right, everyone, I'm back. Just figured I'd tell you about the video I released earlier this week, and then another topic that I kind of do to kind of help me unwind. So if you haven't watched the first I said the last video, please do, because it's gonna really kind of trip you up if I start talking about this, because there's always those videos that says whatever out of context and this kind of. But so if anyone is a fan of the DC universe, then they may have recognized that basically the first part of every thing was an emotion. This was actually the emotional spectrum involving like the Lantern Corps. At first, where they just kind of started out with the Green Lanterns, and then they started going with yellow. Then they just started covering every kind of color, and they started to even have other ones because like, apparently in the distant future there's actually gold lanterns, but you have to be so toxically happy all the time. It's like, like like you've been brainwashed. So if anyone has seen like the Chicken Run 2, that's pretty much what I would say. It's like, hey, you've joined the cult, just wait for your time and that's it. But yeah, I know that technically life and death really aren't considered emotions, but it's more like the act of actually having emotion, because people say, oh, you're so full of life, with everything, and then if you say you're like dead inside, that's that's I could definitely call it, because not so much like with apathy, being like, apathy is more like I really don't care about something, rather like in this case death is, like I said, being totally dead inside. It's like, you know you said you see something, it's like, and it's like you don't even like raise an eyebrow. So it's just it's like you just see it. You're kind of like one of those Busbys outside of Buckingham Palace. It seemed like you could do almost a lot of weird things in front of them, and they just won't react. I mean, yes, they may blink on occasion, but it's just like, you pretty much have way too much of a poker face, so that even if something does happen, it's like you don't even have the chance to say what just happened. So yeah, but I actually started to create a couple said others. So first one I actually did was curiosity, because that just never really seemed to is really ever brought up, because what it said, like we're all about like answering questions of life. So I'm thinking, what if someone was able to wield a lot more of the spectrum? Because if you're actually a white lantern, you pretty much can use everything, because everything just because white's all the colors and black is the absence of color. But I'm thinking, what if you actually feel for a little while, you feel more like it said the power of rage is going through you. It said, where exactly is it going to draw the line? And then there's also the fact that maybe one day you actually are finally feeling compassionate and hopeful about something. It said, so you kind of need like more than one. It's kind of like how certain versions of Iron Man will often have more than one arc reactor. Um, it said on them, like it's kind of hard to explain, but certain iterations will often have like two little reactors on, let's say, kind of near the shoulders. And then we kind of would see like for Civil War, he kind of had a little bunch of miniature ones. I think that's just basically the fact that it's like, okay, yes, I can do the unibeam, or I can go, really, really fast, but I can't do it, said at the same time without a serious lag in power. So, so yeah. So you kind of almost need to have more than one. It's kind of like there's actually a character that's both a red and blue lantern, but it seems like all he just needs to do is just keep, certain parts of the blue lantern said power charged, and it works on others. Because when they actually had that CGI Green Lantern series, it just seemed as though that once they found the blue lanterns, they were actually able to be kind of recharged by it, because it often seemed as though that the blue lanterns are nothing more than glorified psychics, because the power of hope doesn't always last very long. But yeah, so that pretty much is what had, I mean, was kind of inspired for other things. Like the idea of the fact that, in terms like color wise, actually made like trust brown, because some people, it said, really aren't worth anything. It said insanity is actually magenta, because it's not actually a real color. It's basically your brain says, Well, it's not quite red, it's not quite blue, it's somewhere in between, and it's not purple or violet because actually purple is a separate color. Um, it's a little hard to really describe, but the idea is just the fact that violet has, so many things that when mixed together, it said it will be on the spectrum, from light to dark. That is on this thing, but the idea is the fact that if one was to just take, red and blue of the similar thing, they don't. It will look very different. Just the fact that red has a very long wavelength. That's why sunsets are red. Blue's a little bit shorter, but apparently it's one of the last colors that really kind of fades away if you're really high up in an airplane or if you go deep underneath the ocean. So yeah, but so that's kind of what it inspired. I just started, writing a couple of those poems, just see, if anyone would actually relate to it. And a few of my friends have actually said, "Oh, I never thought of it like this." It's just like, you gotta guess it. You gotta guess it. It's like they felt like there was familiar, but if you only really know the one, it said one or two lanterns, you wouldn't have known it. They're like, "Oh, okay, now I get it." And it said makes perfect sense. Yeah. So, but yeah, that really helps you unwind. But sometimes you need something a little extra. And ironically, I do something that if I was a lot, if I was like so many years younger, I would have been terrified to do. And said, but I've actually gotten, over kind of the initial issue, to the point where it's not an issue, and that's actually donating platelets. I I ever had a pretty serious issue with needles as a kid. Um, just when you're very young, it's like, okay, time to get all of your shots at once, and it's just like, they show you the needle way too early. And it's like they show like you have like so many other needles to actually go. That's what really messes up. That could really mess up a kid, when they're. And I can understand, some kids can take it, some people can't. It's just a fact that if you have a good doctor, yeah. But yeah, until I actually started with said back in college, I'd only ever donated actual blood once, and it was definitely a decent enough experience. But they weren't very gentle. Like they didn't make sure you looked away when they kind of shoved the needle in, and this needle was a little bit bigger than the one they use now. So that really hurts. Just basically seeing, that little tip, right at your skin, then goes in, pushing everything apart. You're half expecting, blood to come gushing out at any moment, but it just goes right into the tube and everything's fine. But so for a while, I was actually donating blood with this one organization. I'm not going to say what it is in case, because who knows who's listening. But they would give like, some gift cards and like maybe some kind of swag, for going. And then one day I decided, hey, I'm going to donate platelets. And then, when I came back after a while, I thought I was going to donate blood and saying, no, we need you actually for platelets because apparently it said my platelet count's a little bit higher than normal. I think like most of the time, like people may have like a count like 180, and the last one I just actually had was like 292. So that just simply said it's perfectly within health limits. It just means if I was to get it said fall and get a scrape, I'm not going to stay bleeding for a long time. But the idea is that I can actually donate a triple, which when they basically kind of pull up the thing, it basically said 11 times 10, like to the 11th power. It said, and that's quite a bit of actual thing. So yes, it does hurt a little bit when they stick you, but it's a smaller needle, and afterwards, you're pretty much just waiting around for upwards about it said maybe no more than about 2 hours if you're not very well hydrated. I mean, I've actually donated in less than 100 minutes before with no major issues, and I've actually done it so many times. In terms of my donations, I've actually done like more than 5 gallons worth, and I'm not entirely sure exactly how much, you know, everything adds up to because it goes in like two separate bags, and It's nothing too bad. It just kind of looks like a weird orange juice kind of packet. The weirdest thing is basically if you don't prepare for the experience, it can be a bit of a trip because your body's losing calcium. So I just learned to actually just bring a milkshake with me and just kind of drink that while I have it. I mean, probably just need to, you know, eat or drink something with a large amount of calcium beforehand, and that's usually fine. But they'll also give you like some kind of calcium supplement to kind of help with everything, because you will start to actually notice this weird kind of feeling in your jaw, and then other kind of joints, just like from the lack of everything. And but that's not so bad. Instead, the first time I really donated, I actually had a different kind of reaction. It wasn't anything bad. It was just the fact that when they give you that final rinse back, because the idea is the fact they suck out so much blood, they filter it to get the platelets, and they put it back in you. This basically felt like, I was constantly being tickled everywhere. And this was just a side effect because of just having anything put in. So yeah, it's not a bad kind of experience. I mean, you can actually donate platelets a lot more than you could ever do blood or even plasma, because essentially you could actually donate every 2 weeks. I mean, tend to go every 3 weeks, and just because your body doesn't actually need to exhaust so many resources to create platelets. I mean, they actually start off as a much bigger cell called a megakaryocyte, and just kind of like flutter away. Kind of hard to describe, but I guess it's like if you're basically have like a sugar cube and then you drop it into liquid, and it basically just kind of, it doesn't dissolve completely like with cotton candy. It just basically kind of just sits there at the bottom. So that's pretty much what it is, and just the fact that there's no DNA or blood issues with it. So you could basically donate your platelets, and then not even 24 hours, it could be used in a surgery, for whatever kind of purposes. Because I've literally been sitting, kind of, resting my arm afterwards, and some of them saying, they would call someone saying, "Hey, I've got said a triple, that's like a good size count, for you." It said, "What do you need?" And actually, one time, I got this weird handwritten letter. I mean, it wasn't addressed to me, but it was like someone who actually was helpful to the organization, saying, "I had a really hard time, was a woman who had a hard time giving birth, a lot of blood was lost, and just the fact that, so many people were donating, their platelets we're able to kind of help that, because the body can lose a good bit of blood, but the idea is the fact that you want to actually stop the bleeding as soon as possible. Hence the reason why the royal family married more commoners, because that huge hemophilia issue wasn't getting any better. It was like so many monarchs eventually interbreed with each other, and that's basically still present. So, but just the idea of the fact that it's saying, "Hey, I could help do this, and I can do it very often," you know, it said, rather than worrying about waiting, like I said, it said it's only been about, 4 weeks since my last donation of blood. That means you have to wait an entire 4 more weeks just to even do that. Because sometimes, even if you have um, like if you donate and there's like a bad, it doesn't really want to give from one arm, and they don't want to switch, because I've actually cannot use my right arm for donating platelets. It just doesn't seem to want to work. It just kind of clots up a little too quickly. But but they'll treat that like, you did donate a full thing of blood, and they'll kind of keep you on the waiting list. So if you're just doing platelets, it's kind of like the idea with saying, you know, your entire blood is coffee full of grounds. They're just basically filtering out the grounds, to be used for someone else. So yeah, it's not a bad kind of experience. It gets me out of the house. And they do give you a bit of rewards, for everything, because sometimes you have to drive quite a bit to get there, and depending upon how it works, they actually have like individual kind of tiers of what kind of donor you are. So the more, if you donate so many times, you'll go from like the first, basically the low level to the next one, and then so on and so forth. So that every time, so that once you reach a certain point, every time you donate, what you're gonna be. And then usually when I show up, there's often um, a little bit more of an incentive to actually go, because I'll get a call saying, hey, this is the day we're offering 2,000 extra points, which amounts to $50 just for kind of showing up. And that stuff can definitely add up. Although now they're going to be having a little, you basically have to use your points, I said within 30 days of actually using, which kind of is a downside, because if you're trying to kind of stockpile your points for something very important, you can. So it's like if you need something that's worth like 500 bucks, the idea is the fact you'll have to maybe donate twice a month, find a way to donate twice a month, and then maybe get something, get a gift card for whatever you want to buy, and just use it all at once, which is fine. But then you see something off to the side, and it's like, you know what, I want that too, but I don't have enough points, and you're not really able to donate. So sometimes you never know what you're going to have until you find it. I mean, most of the time I buy something off of Amazon. I mean, I actually found a CD that I had not actually seen in 17 years due to a weird little accident. And, I, looked at it, it was fine. And even though the person gave it a 1 star, just because it wasn't the original songs that the artist was known for. But when I got it, everything played fine. It was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. And I could not actually find it either on the website or other things, because when you just, do a search for something, it doesn't all, something may be buried under so many things, but once you see it, you're like, that's it. So, okay. But yeah, so, next video probably release in a few days. I'll actually talk about something I did last week that really helped to open my eyes within my field of work. Was a very interesting experience. A lot of interesting things to talk about. So please, like and subscribe and share this with other people. Even if it's just a little bit of a distraction from your life, that means a lot to me, knowing the fact that someone says, you know what, I like this guy. He said, I want to hear more. So hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you.